I sat in the last pew, hidden behind a pillar, trying to breathe as the music played. My sister was walking down the aisle, smiling like she owned the world. The man waiting for her at the altar used to be mine. 2 weeks ago, I thought I'd be the one in that white dress. Now, my hands were clenched so hard my nails bit into my palm. Everyone around me whispered about how beautiful she looked, how perfect they were together. I stared at him, at the same man I had planned my future with, and I felt nothing but a deep, burning cold inside me. 2 weeks earlier, we had been at my apartment going over seating charts and cake flavors. He'd kissed my forehead before leaving for a quick meeting with my mom. I thought nothing of it. I thought she liked him. I thought she wanted me to be happy. The night everything changed, we were at Mom's dinner table. It was supposed to be a casual meal, just me, him, Mom, and my sister. I remember laughing over something small when Mom set her fork down and said it. "Sweetheart, you've always been fragile. Your sister, she's strong enough for a man like him." It took a moment for her words to sink in. My chest felt tight. I looked at him, waiting for him to defend me, to say something, anything. He didn't. He just shifted in his seat, eyes down like a guilty child. I asked her what she meant, my voice shaking. My sister didn't even hesitate. "We've been seeing each other for months. Mom knows. She thinks we're better for each other." Her smile was sharp, almost daring me to react. I laughed, but it came out broken. "You're joking." She just shrugged and reached for his hand across the table. He didn't pull away. It was like the air went out of the room. Every plan I had, every detail I'd obsessed over for our wedding, meant nothing now. The venue I'd put a deposit on, the dress hanging in my closet, the friends I'd already invited, who would now be forced to take sides. My mom's face was calm, almost pleased, like she'd done me a favor. "You'll find someone who's right for you," she said, as if she wasn't tearing my life apart right there over roasted chicken and green beans. I couldn't breathe. I pushed back my chair, the legs scraping against the floor loud enough to make my sister flinch. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just looked at them, at all three of them, and realized they thought this was the end of me. I left without finishing my meal, walking out into the night with my heart pounding. The cool air hit my face, but it didn't calm me. I wasn't just hurt. I wasn't just humiliated. I was planning. They thought they had taken everything from me. They thought I would just disappear quietly, licking my wounds while they played happy family. But they had no idea what I was about to do. Back then, I thought we were solid. He wasn't perfect, but he was steady. He'd bring me coffee in the mornings when I was running late, send me little texts in the middle of the day, and talk about where we'd live after the wedding. We had small fights, sure. He'd sometimes make decisions without asking me first, and I'd let it go because I didn't want to start an argument. I thought that was just part of being in a relationship. One Sunday, we went to my mom's for dinner. The smell of her roast chicken filled the kitchen, and the table was already set. My sister was there too, glass of wine in hand, wearing a short dress that seemed more like something for a date than a family dinner. At first, everything felt normal. We talked about wedding plans, and I mentioned wanting a small ceremony by the lake. Mom gave a little laugh. "You're too soft for a marriage like this. You'll need a man who can handle your gentle ways." She said it like a joke, but it landed heavy. He didn't say anything, just kept eating. My sister smirked over her glass. I smiled back, pretending I didn't care, but my stomach was tight. As the night went on, my sister kept leaning across him to grab things, brushing her arm against his. Once, she laughed at something he said and put her hand on his arm, letting it linger just a little too long. I told myself I was being dramatic. She was my sister. He was my fiancé. What could possibly happen? Still, I found myself gripping my fork tighter each time I saw her touching him. Later that week, I couldn't sleep. I got up to get some water and heard my mom talking in the kitchen. She was on the phone, her voice low but sharp. I paused in the hallway, just far enough to stay hidden. "She'll ruin him if they stay together," she was saying. My heart thudded. I didn't hear the other person's reply, but Mom kept going. "He needs someone stronger. Someone who won't let him fall apart." I stood there frozen, the glass of water forgotten in my hand. I told myself she must be talking about someone else, that I was imagining it. But deep down, something shifted in me. I went back to bed, lying next to the man I was supposed to marry, listening to his steady breathing. I stared at the ceiling for hours, replaying my mom's words in my head. That was the first time I felt the crack, small, almost invisible, but it was there. I didn't know it yet, but it was the start of everything falling apart. It started with small moments, the kind that are easy to explain away if you want to believe nothing is wrong. At family gatherings, Clare would sometimes notice Ryan and Sophie standing off to the side, talking in low voices. They would lean toward each other, smiling at something no one else could hear. Clare would walk over, and the conversation would stop or change to something casual. She told herself they were just being friendly. After all, they were family now, in a way. Then there was the way her mother began to greet Ryan. She had always been polite to him, but lately, her voice carried more warmth when she called him son. It was the kind of tone Clare had never heard directed at anyone she'd dated before. Linda's eyes lingered on him longer, her smile softer, as if she saw him as more than just her daughter's boyfriend. Sophie also started coming by Clare's apartment more often. At first, she would call or text before stopping in, but soon she began showing up unannounced. More than once, Clare came home from work to find Sophie sitting in the living room, chatting with Ryan, her shoes kicked off like she lived there. Sophie would wave it off, saying she was just in the area and thought she'd drop by. Clare tried to take it at face value, but it unsettled her. Thanksgiving made everything harder to ignore. The family table was full, everyone passing dishes and telling stories. Sophie slid into the chair right next to Ryan before Clare had the chance to sit there. All through the meal, their shoulders touched. Every time Sophie laughed, she leaned in closer, and Ryan didn't move away. From across the table, Linda watched them with an expression Clare had seen before. The same look she'd get when setting up a friend with someone she thought was perfect for them. Clare's stomach was tight the whole evening, but she kept quiet. She told herself she was imagining things, that her mother's strange warmth and Sophie's visits were just coincidences. She reminded herself that Ryan had chosen her, that they lived together, that they were building a life. She wanted to believe it. She needed to believe it. It wasn't until that night in the kitchen, the night she heard her mother telling Ryan he should marry Sophie, and Ryan admitting he'd thought about it, that the truth could no longer be pushed aside. All those small moments she had brushed off suddenly lined up, each one another crack in the life she thought she had. And now, she could see clearly where those cracks had been leading all along. Clare knew that storming in with accusations would only make them deny everything. If she wanted to expose them, she would need proof, something they couldn't talk their way out of. So she began to play along. Her voice stayed light, her smile easy, even when her stomach twisted. When Sophie mentioned needing help moving furniture or picking something up from the store, Clare would turn to Ryan and say, "You should go with her. I'm busy that day anyway." She made it sound like she was doing both of them a favor. Ryan never questioned it. Sophie always agreed a little too quickly. At family dinners, she started bringing her large purse and keeping it on the floor next to her chair. Inside, hidden in a side pocket, was a small audio recorder she'd bought quietly one afternoon. She switched it on before arriving and let it run through the evening. She never drew attention to the bag, treating it like just another accessory. The first recording she listened to made her hands shake. In a quiet corner of the kitchen, her mother's voice was clear. "Sophie is better for you, Ryan. She'll keep you on your toes. Claire's too gentle." Sophie laughed in the background. "You're not wrong." Ryan didn't correct her. He just said, "I know." Clare kept recording. Every dinner seemed to offer more. Her mother encouraging Ryan to spend more time with Sophie, get to know her better. Sophie dropping comments about how some people just aren't meant to be together forever, followed by Ryan chuckling. The worst were the moments she could hear Ryan's tone soften when talking to Sophie, the little edge of warmth he never used with Clare anymore. He asked about her day, offered to help with errands, made inside jokes that Clare didn't understand. The more she listened, the clearer it became. He wasn't just being polite. He was enjoying it. Each recording was like a small cut, sharp but necessary. Every word hurt, but it also gave her exactly what she needed. There would be no excuses when she finally brought this into the light. Her heartbreak was no longer the kind that made her want to cry. It shifted into something colder, sharper. She stopped asking herself how they could do this to her and started thinking about how she could make them regret it. By the time she had enough recordings to fill a folder on her laptop, Clare wasn't the same person she'd been a few weeks before. She didn't feel soft anymore. She didn't feel like someone they could push aside. She wasn't going to just catch them. She was going to make sure everyone saw exactly who they were. It started with small changes. He began canceling plans we'd made, saying he was too busy or something had come up. At first, I believed him. Work could get hectic, and I didn't want to seem clingy. But it kept happening. Movie nights we'd planned for weeks suddenly postponed, dinners rescheduled without a real reason. When I did see him, he'd mention being at my mom's house more often. Sometimes he'd say he was helping her with things around the yard, other times that my sister needed a ride somewhere. I thought it was nice he got along with my family, but it bothered me that these visits didn't seem to include me. One Saturday, my mom called, saying she and my sister had a family errand to run, and I didn't need to come. Later that day, I went out for groceries and saw them, my fiancé and my sister, walking out of a cafe together, laughing like they were sharing some private joke. They didn't see me. I stood there on the sidewalk, my stomach twisting. That night, I asked him about it. He didn't look surprised or guilty, just sighed like I was being difficult. "You're overthinking," he said, shaking his head. "We were just helping your mom out. You make everything a big deal." I wanted to believe him, but the way he dismissed me made my skin crawl. A few days later, I was at my mom's again, helping her with dinner, when my sister strolled in. She glanced at me, then at him, and smirked. "Some men need a woman who can challenge them," she said casually, pouring herself a drink. My mom didn't react, like it was a normal thing to say. He looked down at his phone. My cheeks burned, but I forced a smile, pretending her words meant nothing. That night, I met my best friend for coffee. I told her about the canceled plans, the cafe, the comment my sister made. She didn't laugh it off or tell me I was being paranoid. She just leaned forward and said, "Something's off. You need to dig deeper." Her words stuck in my head the whole way home. I didn't know what I would find, but I knew I couldn't just let it go. It happened late one evening when he left his phone on the coffee table and stepped out to take a call. I wasn't looking for trouble, but the screen lit up and a preview of a message from my sister appeared. It wasn't casual. It wasn't something you could explain away. Her words were soft, flirty, and personal in a way that made my stomach twist. My hands shook as I picked up the phone. I scrolled through their conversation, and each message hit harder than the last. There were long strings of heart emojis, late night, I miss you texts, and even pictures I didn't want to see. It wasn't just harmless flirting. It was a relationship, and it had been going on for a long time. Then I saw a different chat, one between him and my mom. One message stood out like it was glowing on the screen. "She'll never be the wife you need." My chest felt tight. I couldn't believe she'd actually written that about me to the man I was supposed to marry. When he came back inside, I was still holding the phone. My face must have said everything, because he froze in the doorway. I asked him what all of this was, why my sister was sending him those messages, why my mom was telling him I wasn't good enough. At first, he tried to play dumb. "You're blowing this out of proportion," he said, but his voice cracked. I pressed him harder, reading his own words back to him. His shoulders slumped. Finally, he admitted it. My mom had been telling him for months that my sister was a better fit for his future, that she was stronger, that I would hold him back. I could feel my heart breaking, but I kept pushing. "And you just believed her?" I asked. His eyes flickered toward the door, like he was hoping this would end if he didn't have to look at me. That's when my sister walked in. She glanced at the phone in my hand and didn't even try to act guilty. "I'm just more his type," she said with a little shrug, like it was a fact we should all accept. Her confidence was worse than the betrayal itself. She stood there as if she had won something, as if I was just in the way. I looked between the two of them, him avoiding my eyes, her looking smug, and realized I didn't want either of them in my life anymore. I put the phone down on the table and walked out. My legs felt heavy, but my steps were steady. Behind me, I could hear my sister's voice, low and mocking, but I didn't turn around. The cold air outside hit my face, but it didn't clear the anger burning in my chest. I was devastated, but under all of that pain was something else, something sharper. I wasn't done. I moved in with my best friend the same night I walked out. She didn't ask for the full story at first. She just made me tea and gave me a blanket, letting me have the silence I needed. But after a couple of days, my mind started to clear, and all I could think about was how to make them pay for what they'd done. I began by going through my phone, saving every text and email that hinted at what was happening. I dug through our old wedding emails and found little details I'd missed before. Him canceling plans with me right after messages from my sister, my mom sending him updates without copying me in. I took screenshots of everything. Next, I checked our wedding registry. It wasn't ours anymore. The date was different, the location had changed, and my sister's name was in the spot where mine used to be. I stared at it for a long time before taking pictures of every page, making sure I had proof before they realized I could still see it. One evening, my friend came home with something even bigger. A mutual friend had accidentally recorded part of a phone conversation with my mom. In the recording, her voice was smug and certain as she said, "I knew from the start they were better for each other. I just had to help it along." Hearing it made my skin prickle. It wasn't a guess anymore, it was confirmation. She had planned this. A few days later, another blow came. Someone we both knew sent me a message late at night. "I heard your sister's pregnant." I froze, reading the words over and over. She said she overheard it at the salon where my sister had been bragging about. My chest felt heavy, but I didn't reply right away. I needed to think. Every part of me wanted to go straight to them and throw all of this in their faces. But I stopped myself. If I confronted them now, they'd find a way to twist the story, to make it about me being jealous or bitter. I wanted to make sure that when the truth came out, there'd be no way for them to escape it. So I kept collecting. I made folders on my laptop, texts, emails, photos, the recording. My friend helped me label each file with dates and descriptions. We even backed it all up on a flash drive, just in case. By the end of the week, I had more than enough to ruin them. But I wasn't ready to move yet. The timing had to be perfect. And when I finally made my move, it would hit them harder than they could ever imagine. I decided the best way to finish this was to make them believe I had given up. One morning, I called my mom and told her I wanted to stop all the fighting. My voice was calm, almost friendly. I said I just wanted us to move on, and that I didn't want to carry anger anymore. She sounded surprised but pleased, and she invited me over that week. When I arrived, I brought a small box of cookies, acting like it was a peace offering. My mom welcomed me in, and my sister came out of her room with a fake smile. We all sat in the living room, talking like nothing bad had happened. I kept my tone light, even laughing at small things. Inside, I was watching every move they made. Halfway through the visit, my sister's phone buzzed on the coffee table. She glanced at it, but didn't pick it up. A few minutes later, she went to the bathroom, leaving it behind. My mom had stepped into the kitchen, so I reached for the phone. My hands moved quickly. I wasn't going to waste the chance. I went into her email app and searched for anything about the wedding. That's when I saw it. There were receipts showing thousands of dollars in charges on my mom's credit card, payments for the venue, catering, and even her dress. The wedding was being paid for almost entirely by my mom. I took photos of every document and sent them to my own phone before locking it again and putting it back exactly where she left it. A little later, we were in her room, and she was picking out jewelry. I set my phone on her dresser, camera facing her, and pretended to be distracted while she talked. Out of nowhere, she started complaining about her fiancé, my ex. She called him boring, said he wasn't ambitious enough, and joked that she'd upgrade someday. I didn't react, just nodded like I agreed. My phone recorded every word. That night, back at my friend's apartment, I watched the video again. It was perfect, clear sound, her face in full view, every insult right there. It wasn't just proof of betrayal anymore. It was proof she didn't even respect him. The next step was to plant seeds of doubt. I made an anonymous email account and sent short, vague messages to certain wedding guests. People I knew liked gossip. "You should ask the bride about who's really paying for the wedding," one said. Another read, "Not everyone's as happy as they seem." I sent the video clip to one guest who couldn't resist drama. I didn't want a full explosion yet. I just wanted whispers. Enough that, when the truth came out, they'd realize the signs had been there all along. Soon, I started hearing from mutual friends that guests were already asking quiet questions, wondering if my sister and her fiancé were as perfect as they claimed. That was exactly what I wanted, doubt spreading before the real storm hit. The evening before the wedding, I drove to the venue just as the rehearsal was ending. Cars were still in the parking lot, and I could hear faint music from inside. I slipped through a side entrance I had used before during our own planning visits. The hall was lit softly, the tables already decorated, and the projector screen stood at the front, ready for the big day. I spotted the laptop connected to the projector, and the small silver USB drive plugged into it. That was the one holding their slideshow, the sweet, smiling photos of them they planned to show the guests. My heart pounded as I reached into my pocket and pulled out my own identical USB. I moved quickly, swapping them without making a sound. As I turned to leave, I heard heels clicking against the floor. My sister stepped into the room, her arms crossed and a smirk already on her face. "Couldn't resist coming to see how it's done?" she asked, her tone dripping with mock sweetness. I forced a small smile. "Just wanted to wish you luck. No point holding grudges forever." I kept my voice steady, casual, as if we were talking about the weather. She tilted her head, studying me like she was trying to figure out my angle. "Funny," she said. "I thought you'd be too embarrassed to show your face here." Her words were sharp, but I didn't give her the reaction she wanted. I just shrugged and told her I hoped she'd get everything she wanted tomorrow. She smiled at that, but it was the kind of smile that said she thought she'd already won. I walked out without rushing, my hands in my pockets, keeping the truth locked behind my calm expression. Outside, my best friend was waiting in the car. She looked at me as soon as I got in. "Please tell me you didn't do anything stupid," she said, gripping the steering wheel. "Nothing stupid," I replied, buckling my seatbelt. She glanced at me again. "This could backfire. If it goes wrong, you'll be the one they talk about, not them." I turned to face her, my voice low but certain. "It won't go wrong. And when it's done, no one will ever see them the same way again." She didn't argue after that. We drove away from the glowing lights of the venue, the faint sound of laughter from inside fading into the night. In my pocket, the original USB sat cold and small, holding the images they had chosen to show the world, images that would never make it to the screen. I slipped into the church just before the ceremony began, choosing a seat in the far back where no one would notice me. The music played softly, and everyone's attention was fixed on the front. My sister walked down the aisle in her white dress, smiling like she was the star of a movie. He stood there waiting, pretending this was the happiest day of his life. I kept still, blending into the shadows, letting the vows and rings pass without a word. No one knew I was there, and that was exactly how I wanted it. After the ceremony, the guests moved to the reception hall. The tables were covered with flowers, the cake stood tall in the corner, and the music was light and cheerful. I stayed near the back again, close enough to see the screen and hear the chatter. When the lights dimmed for the slideshow, the first few minutes were exactly what they expected. Photos of the two of them smiling, laughing, posing together. Guests clapped and whispered about how perfect they looked. Then the screen flickered, and my version of the show began. First came the screenshots of their messages. Late night, I miss you texts from my sister, his replies full of hearts and kisses, the dates and times showing exactly when they'd been sent. Then the video of my sister mocking him, saying she'd upgrade someday. Murmurs rippled through the room, followed by sharp gasps. The next clip was my mom's voice, bragging to her friend about how she had brought them together, saying I wasn't strong enough for her. Her words echoed in the silence that had fallen over the hall. People began shifting in their seats. A few stood up. Someone muttered, "This is disgusting." Chairs scraped against the floor as guests started walking out. At the head table, his face turned pale. He looked from the screen to my sister, his jaw tight. She tried to laugh it off at first, but the whispers were too loud now, the stares too sharp. My mom stood and started talking over the noise, her voice high and defensive, saying it was all lies, that someone was trying to ruin the day. No one believed her. My sister's eyes found me at the back of the room. She stormed toward me, shouting my name, her face twisted in anger. Before she could reach me, a guest stepped in front of her, telling her to sit down. Others began speaking up, questioning her, questioning him, questioning my mom. The perfect wedding they had planned was crumbling in front of everyone, and there was nothing they could do to stop it. I stayed where I was silent, watching it all fall apart. In the days after the wedding, the whispers didn't stop. My mom's friends stopped answering her calls. The women she used to meet for lunch avoided her at the grocery store. She wasn't invited to her usual church group meetings anymore. The image she had built for herself in the community was gone. One afternoon, my phone lit up with his name. I stared at it, letting it ring until it stopped. He called again later that night, and again the next day, leaving voicemails about wanting to explain and make things right. I didn't answer once. He'd already said everything I needed to hear at that table weeks ago. Word spread quickly that my sister's engagement had been called off. The man who was supposed to be her new husband had packed his things and moved out of her apartment within 2 days. Not long after, I heard from someone we both knew that the pregnancy she had bragged about wasn't even real. She had lied to him and to everyone else, hoping it would lock him in. I decided it was time to make sure the truth didn't get twisted. I sat down at my laptop and wrote out the whole story from start to finish. Every message, every recording, every detail I had collected. I didn't use fake names. I didn't soften anything. I uploaded the screenshots, the audio, and the video clips so people could see and hear for themselves. Within hours, it started spreading. By the next morning, it had been shared thousands of times. People from all over were sending me messages, some thanking me for telling the story, others sharing their own betrayals. My inbox was full of encouragement. Strangers told me I had done the right thing, that it was brave. A few even sent job offers, saying they liked how organized and determined I was. Others invited me to events or asked if I'd speak about what happened. It was strange, going from being humiliated in a small room to having people all over the world know my side. I never responded to my mom, my sister, or him. Whatever they had to say didn't matter anymore. They had made their choices, and now they had to live with the consequence. I didn't forgive them, but I didn't need to fight them either. The truth had already done the work for me. Months passed, and my life looked nothing like it had before. I had a new job that I actually enjoyed, a steady paycheck, and a small apartment that felt completely mine. The space was quiet, clean, and free of the tension I used to live with. I didn't speak to my mom or my sister at all. My phone was free of their names, my social media was locked tight, and my days were peaceful. I had learned to enjoy simple routines, making my own coffee in the morning, walking to work, coming home to a place where no one undermined me or lied to my face. The storm they had caused in my life was over, and I had no interest in letting it start again. One evening, I stopped at the grocery store on my way home. I was comparing 2 brands of pasta sauce when I heard a familiar voice behind me. I turned my head slightly, and there he was, my ex-fiancé. He looked different. His hair was unkempt, his shirt wrinkled. There was no smile, no confidence, just a dull, tired expression. He was holding a small basket with only a few things inside. He saw me, froze for a second, and then gave a quick, awkward nod. For a moment, we just stood there in the same aisle, the air thick with everything we weren't saying. He looked like he wanted to speak, maybe to explain again, maybe to apologize, but I didn't give him the chance. I smiled politely, the kind of smile you give a stranger you'll never see again, and stepped past him without a word. I didn't turn back, not even once. As I left the store with my bag in hand, I felt lighter than I had in years. They had taken everything from me once, my relationship, my trust, my place in my own family. But in the end, I had taken everything from them. What do you think? Was I right to cut them out forever, or should I have given them another chance? I can't see forgiving them, but I'm curious what you'd do. Share your thoughts in the comments, and follow for more betrayal and revenge stories you won't forget.